It's the age-old argument, who is the best player? The most modern take on it involves only two players in all honesty, but in days gone by, it might have involved far more. The greatest ever tag is generally awarded on favoritism, patriotism, or a bias because of results against a favorite team. It's also at times something of a misnomer, giving the disparity between different eras of the game. But we can always compare players from the same time, the same game, the same decade. Though the rules of football as we know it were devised in 1848, it wasn't until the 1950s when the game was recognizable as it is today. Here are the greatest players, one from each decade from the 1950s to today. Welcome to Football Legacy. Don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on the notifications, because we have a lot of content coming your way, and trust me when I say you don't want to miss out. 1950s, Alfredo Di Stefano. The 1950s saw an explosion of talent, or at least much more of it was brought to the attention of the world at large. From John Charles at Leeds to Fritz Walter at Kaiserslautern, players from around Europe showcased their abilities and laid claim to the title of the best in the world. No 50s list would be complete without a mention of just Fontaine, of course, but in truth there was a superpower at this time, and they played in Spain. Real Madrid won 4 league titles and 4 consecutive European Cups during the decade, as they dominated the landscape of football. And though they had other star players, Francisco Gento being one, it was Alfredo Di Stefano who rightly should be acknowledged as the best of the 50s. Di Stefano played in all those trophy wins and netted over 300 times for Real Madrid. Curiously, he also played international football for 3 countries during his career, though only for Spain during the 1950s. 1960s, Ferenc Puskás. If the 50s were special, then the 1960s were nothing short of mind-blowing in terms of football talent around the globe. From the legendary Russian goalkeeper Lev Yashin through to Manchester United's Bobby Charlton and George Best, the Brazilian Garrincha and the Portuguese striker Eusebio truly were some remarkable players in their generation, whose feats will be remembered for decades yet to come. Inter Milan's attacking fullback Gianto Facchetti, one of the first and finest in the game, should not be overlooked also. Undoubtedly, there will be those who champion Pelé, one of the finest players of the game ever, as the best of this decade. But there was a greater player than Pelé in this era, Ferenc Puskás, the legendary Hungarian, one of the magical Magyars. Puskás shone as he led his national team to the World Cup final, where they lost in 1954. It was in the 60s though when Puskás enjoyed arguably his finest moments, and certainly the most successful spell of his career, despite being more than 30 years of age when he joined Real Madrid. He scored 4 goals in the 7-3 thrashing of Eintracht Frankfurt in the 1960 European Cup final, Real Madrid's 5th consecutive triumph, and went on to win 5 league titles with the club in the years that followed. Puskás was one of the greatest 4 or 5 players to have ever played the game of football, and perhaps would have been regarded more as such had he been of a different nationality, or had his Hungarian team ended successfully in 1954. 1970s, Johan Cruyff. The 1970s had its fair share of top-class talent, but one man stands firmly above them all, Johan Cruyff. Hugo Sanchez, Teofilo Cubies, Revellino, Ruud Krol, and the Bayern Munich duo Sepp Maier and Franz Beckenbauer were all true greats, but none come close to eclipsing Cruyff. Having spent his formative years making himself a worldwide phenomenon with Ajax, Cruyff moved to Barcelona in 1973, where he went on to win a Copa del Rey and a Spanish league title, having already won a hat-trick of European Cups with his former club. Cruyff was one of the most respected players of the Dutch total football era under Rinus Michels, and was an elegant visionary player who was capable of achieving on the field that which others couldn't even dream about. He is a 3-time European Footballer of the Year. 1980s, Diego Maradona. Much like the previous decade, there were a whole host of outrageously talented footballers on display in the 1980s. But all of them were eclipsed by a true genius, a once-in-a-generation talent who perhaps remains the greatest individual the game has ever seen. Diego Maradona played for Boca Juniors and Barcelona, but it was at Napoli that perhaps his greatest talents were on display, most regularly, as well as for his national team of Argentina, of course. Maradona won a UEFA Cup and 2 Italian league championships with Napoli, but will be forever remembered for his incredible displays at the 1986 World Cup in Mexico, which he had a huge hand in Argentina winning. Diego's legendary goal of the century was widely regarded as the greatest of all time, and for many people still is, because of the occasion as much as the skill it took. It still behooves us to at least give a cursory nod to those who didn't reach the majestic heights of the legendary savant, but were certainly standout players in their respective leagues and the game at large. Michel Platini was one of the game's greats, as was Karl-Heinz Rummenigge for Bayern Munich, and his teammate Lothar Matthäus in Italy. Zbigniew Boniek was perhaps the greatest Polish player ever, and plied his trade at Juventus in his prime, while Kenny Dalglish of Liverpool and Zico at Flamengo were also truly amongst the greatest players in the world. Franco Baresi and Dino Zoff make up just a handful of these other memorable players. The 1990s. Mikel Laudrup. While the rest of Europe and South America have contributed players to each decade up until now, many of the very best of the footballing world resided firmly in Italy for much of the 1990s. Serie A was the top flight for entertaining quality football, and the fact that Italian sides made up 9 of the European Cup finalists between 89 and 98 was a testament to it. In fact, the 1991 final was the only one in this period of time which did not contain a side from Italy. Paolo Maldini and Marcel Desailly held sway for AC Milan, while Roberto Baggio dazzled everybody at Juventus, AC Milan and Bologna for a time. George Weah was another one who made the Majestic seem easy at times, though perhaps not with the consistency that others achieved. Outside of Italy, Abedi Pelé and Peter Schmeichel were legends in their own right, and Ronaldo perhaps was at his most devastating while playing for PSV and Barcelona in this period, before his move to Inter Milan and the beginnings of his injury problems. One more bears mentioning before we move on to the greatest of the decade. Zinedine Zidane began his rise late in this decade to become one of the best in the world from any time period. The 1990s though belonged to Mikel Laudrup, the Danish attacking midfielder playing at both Real Madrid and Barcelona. Laudrup might have missed out on European Championships glory with his country in 1992, but still collected a European Cup, an Italian league title, 5 league titles in Spain, another in Holland, and won over a century of caps during his magnificent career. The Danish playmaker maybe showed his best abilities at Barcelona, but still had plenty left to give to rivals Real Madrid, whom he directly transferred to in 1994. The 2000s. Zinedine Zidane. Zinedine Zidane at Real Madrid. There has been perhaps no finer exponent of playing the game of football to the absolute highest level without the need for breakneck speed. Zidane moved from Juventus to Real in 2001, and in his 5 years in Spain, picked up a haul of medals including a Champions League, a Spanish League title, and another FIFA World Player of the Year award, his 3rd overall. Incredible poise, vision, accuracy of passing, and sublime control made Zidane peerless in the most recently past decade, with perhaps only Ronaldinho of Barcelona able to closely compare to him. The French midfielder also won a European Championship while he was with Real to go alongside the World Cup that he won in 1998, but his career ended on a less than perfect note when in the 2006 World Cup he was sent off in the final instead of winning it. 2010s, Leo Messi. There are only 2 candidates for this particular explosive decade, Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, and it isn't even a particularly close decision. The two are the standout players in the most modern version of the game, athletically a world apart from the likes of Puskás or Fontaine. In terms of pure talent though, Messi stands head and shoulders above anybody else. All who were consistently watching knew he was going to dominate the rest of the 2010s. Playing in a fantastic team, he has already won 5 league titles and 3 Champions Leagues, is a 3-time winner of the Ballon d'Or, and is an all-time leading goal scorer for Barcelona, and is chasing down the all-time world record of scoring the most goals during one calendar year. That currently stands at 85, held by Gerd Müller. Messi so far has 82, and several games to play in December. He's undoubtedly the star of the present decade. What do you think? Leave a comment and tell us how you would rank it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.